From the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is AgDay.
Crop tour continues through the Midwest. We have reports from Indiana.
Well, will we see a near record corn yield here in Indiana? We have coverage from the Pro Farmer Midwest Crop Tour on the Eastern Leg.
And scouts in Nebraska are still seeing hail damage along their routes, but will it impact the corn yield? We'll have an update ahead in the show.
In agribusiness, the trade negotiations chess match.
The EU pact, that president has to go home and sell it to all those EU countries.
And a sour smell, the unique blooming corpse flower is drawing crowds in California.
AgDay, presented by the Chevy Silverado. High-strength steel for high-strength dependability.
Good morning, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Crop Tour scouts are making their way into and across Iowa this morning as markets look for clues to the size of this year's crop. Now in its 26th year, the Pro Farmer Midwest Crop Tour scouring the region, measuring the potential of corn and soybean crops in 7 of the major growing states. USDA rolling out its weekly crop progress report Monday, showing a high-quality crop, though conditions retreated a couple of points last week, and maturity continues to run ahead of pace. Scouts on the eastern leg of the tour moved into Illinois yesterday afternoon, where the crop is running well ahead of average. 63% of the state's corn crop is dented. The 5-year average is 36%.
Coverage of the Pro Farmer Midwest Crop Tour is brought to you by Pioneer. You can always count on your local Pioneer team to provide year-round support. Year after year, Pioneer is committed to the success of every acre on your farm. Pioneer, with you from the word go.
Now let's start in Ohio, the side I was on. Corn yields in at 179.5 bushels to the acre, up 9% from last year. The biggest impacts appear to be a 7% increase in ear counts. Soybeans also seeing a 12% jump in pods for a 3x3 square. Moisture significantly better than a year ago. Tyne Morgan takes over for me on the eastern leg. Tuesday, she traveled with scouts as they made their way across Indiana. Tyne?
Well, Clinton, we can dub the Pro Farmer Midwest Crop Tour the Muddy Boots Tour here in Indiana. Scouts were greeted with rain as they were on the quest to ground truth USDA's near record corn yield projection this year.
I would say if you use consistency for a word in Ohio, variability is probably more accurate in Indiana.
It's variability that's mixed in with plenty of mud this year. A lot of wet feet for the scouts and these Indiana crops.
We've been seeing a lot more bug pressure, I would say, in Indiana than usual.
From heavier pest pressure to waning soybean stand counts, with recent rains and winds showing up in the form of a few fields of lodged corn.
We saw a lot of lodging out there, very wet. Definitely the corn is not as advanced as what we saw yesterday's samples.
As scouts waded through the soybean fields, it was a disappointing start to the day.
Definitely, I'd say a majority of our stops have been fairly underwhelming.
But as scouts headed farther north, bean count started to ramp up.
But we are seeing more 3-4 bean pods. These are probably the best beans we've seen today.
But even these better bean fields still seeing some challenges.
15-inch rows.
Challenges that aren't as widespread in neighboring fields planted with corn this year. It's those yields coming in the form of ear counts and kernel depth.
Forecast right now is at 186, up from 180 last year in Indiana.
Hawthorne signs off on the national corn yield for USDA NASS, and he says while the agency isn't currently projecting a record corn crop in the state, the estimate is only 2 bushels shy of a new record yield, and it's a near record crop he's seen this year.
I want to see good ear population. That's one thing that our objective yield survey showed this year, is we're going to see less skips in those rows. I feel like it meets our expectations pretty well.
It's a solid corn crop local farmer Keenan Liminger is also seeing.
Last year on my farm we averaged over 220, and this year I think we're going to be closer to 200, so a little bit back, a little softer than last year.
After a dry start to the year, it's a hot and dry midseason that he thinks ate away at top-end corn yield.
I think we got good root development during that period of time, and I don't think that hurt us as much as the hot, dry period that we had there in July when we were trying to pollinate.
And he says while it's still early for soybeans, he thinks soybeans will yield better than last year. Reporting from Indiana, I'm Tyne Morgan for AgDay.
In South Dakota, yields were in at 178, a 20-point jump from last year's drought-stressed crop. Ear counts were 10.5% higher, while soybeans in a 3x3 climbed 13% above last year. Moisture also 40 points better. On Tuesday, scouts made the trek through hail-damaged northern Nebraska while looking to the southeastern part of the state for better yields. Betsy Given reports from the western leg of the tour. Betsy.
As Brandon Honeycutt walks another row, he'll tell you Nebraska crops look good in his area.
It's probably as good as I've ever seen it look.
The U.S. Department of Agriculture seems to think so too, forecasting 196 bushels per acre as an estimated average corn yield for the state. But Honeycutt says there are problem areas.
We're going to have a really good crop. We've had some areas that had some issues this year. You know, some late storms have come in and decimated some areas, but not big areas.
Scouts like Brent Judish saw the uniformed crop on the way down to Grand Island, Nebraska.
It's been a very consistent crop, and if all 3 years are uniform versus one being maybe 20% less, it makes a big difference on the final yield.
But it didn't take long for many scouts to run into miles of hail.
Then we hit an area we drove 10 miles and it was all zero. There was no beans, no corn to sample.
Now scouts are seeing if their routes will be better to Nebraska City. Judish still seeing hail damage along his path through Hamilton and York counties.
I think we just pulled a 186 off of this field, which with hail damage being at least 15–20%, that's still pretty good corn.
Local farmers acknowledging hail as well.
I mean, it wasn't very wide band, maybe 2–3 miles wide.
So we'll see some hail probably?
In this, it goes southeast here if you go. But if you go 10 miles just straight down 34, no, you won't see any.
However, Judish says ears are fairly consistent, which may add bushels per acre come harvest. The crop you're seeing in this part of Nebraska, does it make up for the loss you saw with hail yesterday?
I would say yes, because if you only have, say, 0.5% of the acres are hail damaged, but every field is a couple percent better than last year, it more than makes up for that, I would say.
Scouts stating beans look better too.
They're looking really good. They're further along in maturity than what I was seeing yesterday. Plant count in this area is much better than what I was seeing yesterday as well.
Looks pretty good.
As farmers like Honeycutt are thankful for their crop, it may be a wait and see how the whole state pans out come harvest. Reporting in southeast Nebraska, I'm Betsy Gibbon.
Our coverage continues tomorrow morning on Ag Day, and be sure to follow our extensive coverage on agweb.com and get real-time comments and images from the field on Twitter, #PFTour18. We do have some other crop conditions to report outside of the Corn Belt, including a struggling cotton crop, 42% now called good to excellent. Much of the problem stems from Texas, where more than half of that crop is rated poor to very poor. Just 22% is good to excellent. Spring wheat has a strong showing with 3/4 rated good to excellent, and harvest has pushed past the halfway mark. 60% is cut, which is well ahead of the average pace. To other news, USDA releasing the July milk production report Monday. Total milk production for the United States rose 0.4% over a year ago. Per cow production also rose from last July. It's now 1,953 pounds. That's 10 pounds above last year's levels. Those extra pounds offsetting declining cow numbers. USDA says the national cow herd is 9.3 million head, 8,000 fewer cows than a year ago. Trade delegations from the U.S. and China are set to meet later today in Washington. The two-day summit considered low-level exploratory discussions, searching for a resolution to that escalating tariff and trade tensions. The talks coming ahead of two planned November meetings involving the leaders of both countries. Meanwhile, President Trump continuing to push forward on implementing tariffs for $200 billion in Chinese goods, or roughly half of all imports. Crop Tour doesn't travel through Missouri, but if it did, scouts were sure to see some rather tough conditions. Cindy Clausen's in for Mike Hoffman today and has crop comments.
Good morning, Clinton. While there's drought throughout the West, Missouri is the only Midwestern state with serious drought problems. USDA says 66% of topsoil and 77% of subsoil moisture is short to very short. That lack of moisture has obliterated crop potential. 44% of the state's corn and 37% of soybeans are poor to very poor. Taking a look at the wind forecast as we head into the next 24 to 36 hours, it's going to be the northeast once again that we'll be watching for some heavier winds. and also in the Four Corners region. So it's a lot like it was in the last 24 hours. Heading into tonight and starting off your Thursday, we'll see those winds kind of die down in most of the areas, but then start to pick up again as we get into Thursday afternoon, now moving a little bit more into the Plains states. We'll have your national forecast coming up in just a few minutes, but for now, here are some hometown temps.
Your next piece of equipment is on MachineryPete.com. Search equipment from dealerships across the country to find what you're looking for. Only on MachineryPete.com.
Trade continues to be a hot topic in farm country. We'll talk about planned meetings and potential outcomes next in agribusiness. And lines of people are anxiously awaiting to see a peculiar plant, but their curiosity is piqued by more than just the bloom. In agribusiness, Major Grains feeling pressure at the CME in Chicago Tuesday. Let's get details from the floor.
Talk a little bit about soybeans today. We've seen a 55 3/4 cent rally in November beans in just 6 trading days. General hope that China and the U.S. will advance in their talks to reduce tariffs. Good rains moving across the Midwest over the weekend and overnight is going to help enhance the yield potential for the soybean crop. Talk a little bit about the hog market today. We've seen a sharp rally in the last 2 weeks. We think it's on a weak foundation and think the market can set back from here. Number one factor, hope of an increase in exports to Mexico, and hope that China, with the swine fever difficulties, might be in the market for more hogs from the U.S. Thank you. This is Terry Rogensack coming to you from the CME Group trading floor.
With a trade mission headed for Washington today, what does the outcome mean for agriculture? Ty Morgan asked that question in today's analysis from the road.
Here now with Bill Biederman of Allendale. Bill, when you look at the trade situation overall and you look at some of these frameworks that have been announced, we really haven't seen the Trump administration sign any new trade deals. Is that a concern to you at this point? I mean, do you want to see actual trade deals in the works at this point?
Well, sure we do. And I think the Mexican trade pact and the Canadian will happen. I think, you know, that'll happen for sure real soon. I mean, he's got to have that win under his belts. But the EU pact, that president has to go home and sell it to all those EU countries that they're going to support our fight against China. And China's been over there lobbying them, saying, look, you know, the U.S. is raising tariffs on you, they're doubling the tariffs on Turkey, they're raising tariffs on us, they're unreliable, we're reliable, we're going to trade a lot. And so if any of those EU countries back away from their president, it's going to be tough for Trump. He needs the EU to win.
But if you look at what we're looking at today, the landscape today, and you view it as a chess game, do you think that the trade framework with the EU was a positive move?
Hugely positive. I think without that, it would have been all over. Now, I think there's another big thing that's in the chess game. That is, you know, we're importing Chinese shoes, and so they're importing our food. We can get by without their tennis shoes. But they can't get by without food. So I think that's huge in Trump's chest.
But what do you think's next? If you had to guess, what is the next move in this game of chess? What do you think?
I think there's going to be some talks that go nowhere and nowhere until it gets bad again, and maybe the $200 billion gets put into place, which will be in September, and then I think we'll talk.
Okay, so you think that $200 billion worth of new tariffs will go into place?
I think it'll be right down to the day of, or maybe it will.
All right, Bill, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it. Let's take a quick break, and then we'll have a check of weather here on Ag Day.
To talk with Bill Biederman one-on-one, call Allendale Incorporated at 815-404-1917 or head online to allendale-inc.com. Advice, information, ideas, and more. If it's Ag Tech, it's in the Tech Tool Shed, your unbiased one-stop source for everything Ag Tech.
Cindy Clausen joining us for a look at the root zone moisture map. And of course, Cindy, as we look at this, you can see that we have had some improvements in like Missouri, southern Iowa, parts of Illinois.
Yeah, we definitely have, although it is still very dry, as we heard just a little bit ago in the show how dry it was in Missouri. And you can see that on the root zone moisture, especially the northeastern part of Missouri and into Illinois as well. But a lot of areas in the plains and eastern parts of the Corn Belt, Ohio, Tennessee Valley really have gained a lot more moisture. Let's take a look at what we have in store for us today. And our focus will once again be with this storm system that's going to be now moving through the northeastern United States. So we're going to be looking for showers and thunderstorms there. Trailing cold front could spark some showers, maybe some rumbles in the southeast. And then we have a low pressure system over close to the Four Corners region. That's going to be moving eastward and more so into the plains. High pressure will really keep things dry in most of the Corn Belt as we head through your Wednesday and much of your Thursday as well, as that high moves off to the east. It's going to be much cooler, a lot more refreshing for a lot of folks heading into much of the Great Lakes area and into the Ohio Valley. Heading into Wednesday night, we're going to see the front starting to move offshore. You can see that low moving through Kansas, now starting to head over towards Missouri, so you get a little bit more rain in there. And then as we head through the day on Thursday, that high pressure will clear things out in a lot of the east, so you'll see some dry, comfortable conditions. Don't get too used to that, though, because we're going to see things really warming up, though, as we get into the weekend. All right, let's take a look at the precipitation estimate. The past 24 hours really has been the east coast along that low pressure system, and we're going to add to that. That's where we're going to see the heaviest rain, but we're going to keep an eye on that low that's going to be traveling through parts of the Central Plains as well. Temperature-wise, the hot weather is still hanging out in the south, parts of the southwest as well. It's become much more comfortable across the northern tier of states on the backside of that low pressure system. Overnight lows, quite refreshing, opening up the windows in the northern tier of states as we see those temperatures getting down into the 50s and lower 60s. Still some muggy, warm 70s down south. And then as far as tomorrow, still pretty warm down towards Texas, but very comfortable across a lot of the northern tier of states. Now, as we look at the jet stream, we've got that trough that's going to start to move on out, and then a ridge starts to build in as we get into the weekend. That's really going to heat things up in the eastern part of the country, while we'll have a little trough starting to enter the northwestern part of the United States. That's a look at your national forecast. Now let's check out some of the weather where you live. Red Bluff, California, sunny, hazy, and warm today with a high of 93 degrees. Great Bend, Kansas, showers and thunderstorms with a high of 73 degrees. And Stark, Florida, partly cloudy with some showers and thunderstorms and a high of 92.
When we come back, we'll check in on NAFTA negotiations and the impact the deal may have on produce growers. And while beauty is in the eye of the beholder, the same cannot be said for the pungent aroma emanating from this flower.
Don't miss the 2018 Farm Progress Show, August 28th through August 30th in Boone, Iowa. Visit farmprogressshow.com for more information and to purchase tickets online.
From our partners over at the Packer, NAFTA negotiators from the U.S. and Mexico continue to meet in Washington this week. There are rumblings the two could reach a preliminary agreement soon. Mexican trade sources say a major sticking point seems to be settled, as the U.S. has discarded new trade protections for U.S. specialty crop growers. The Florida Fruit and Vegetable Association says specialty crop sectors in Florida and the Southeast can't survive without recourse against Mexico's dumping and subsidy practices. But Mexico says the provision only helps a small number of growers. And new numbers on sales of organic fruit show demand is skyrocketing. According to Nielsen, the latest 2017 totals show organic fruit sales and volumes surging nearly 13% compared to the year prior. Organic berries topping that list with sales rising 22%, followed by bananas and apples. Organic fruit suppliers tell the Packer they've got plenty of product to go around this season, which should help keep those prices lower. It's showtime in Southern California for a particular plant with a special stench. In the Country is next.
In the Country, sponsored by the all-new Kubota Sidekick, a utility vehicle that lets you climb more, cover more, tow more, and enjoy more. Visit KubotaUSA.com.
If you'll allow me a moment to wax poetic, a rose by any other name would smell as sweet. My thanks to Shakespeare for writing that, but then he probably never took a whiff of a corpse flower. A stinky corpse flower is in full bloom in the Southern California town of San Marino. Visitors are flocking to the library to take in the aroma of the flower, known for the rotten stench it releases when it blooms. They actually have 3 of the plants nicknamed Stink, Stank, Stunk.
It smelled like rotting meat or decaying rats or gym socks. I mean, everybody has different opinions. Burnt Brussels sprouts. Everybody has a different opinion on it, but it's pretty interesting.
The blooms typically last for 24 hours, and it's usually just one plant at a time, not all three, which makes this rare for the library. It typically takes 15 years for a corpse flower to reach a mature blooming size. And that's all the time we have this morning. We're sure glad you tuned in. It's been part of your day with us. From all of us here at AgDay, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Have a great day.